Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the main event. Let's get ready to rumble!
And that's right, everybody. Welcome back once again to another edition of the Best Seat in the House podcast. As always, I'm your host, Rob Cramer, joined by my co-host, Daniel Bobo Curlin. And Dan, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm doing good. As you can see, I'm a little bit under the weather, kind of like a little bit off, not a bit more lively as I usually am. Kind of, it's kind of why. I mean, the last couple of days has been like, my mother's been saying, I've never seen you so quiet during the match. I mean, not reacting to anything that's happening. I just said, yeah, it's like inside I kind of am, but it's like I'm going through the hard trouble trying to restrain myself because of my throat. I hope this isn't the result of me being very noisy and stuff during Met games. Who knows what it is, but it's been a lot of hurting, coughing, and the last couple of the Met games have not made it any better. This team, I don't know what's with this team. It's like we play well. I feel like every facet we got, we're the teams are pitching, especially our bullpen. It's like even today's game, I was like, I'm looking at, do we even have the bullpen for this? Because it's just like, and then especially even the late innings where it's like new in the eighth inning, we knew we the start of our lineup. We knew we could get the ninth inning, but ninth inning was in the back. But that's the lineup. Usually we have Diaz, but we don't have that right now. So it's like just disgusting. And then of course also last Saturday's game had PTSD. The fact we lost to Wainwright.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's been the trend all year for this team, man. I mean, and just like the way that you've been feeling, obviously seeing the way our Mets have been playing isn't going to make you feel any better. Like you said, they lost today 10-8 to Houston, and this team has been absolutely terrible. This is the worst team money can buy right now. I'm sorry. This is terrible right now. Look at this. Ever since they swept the Phillies at the end of May and the first day of June, they got swept by Toronto. They got swept by Atlanta. They lost 2 out of 3 to Pittsburgh. They split with the Yankees. They lost 2 out of 3 to St. Louis, and now they lost 2 out of 3 to Houston. This has been absolutely horrible. The last time the Mets won a road series, Dan, the last time they won it was April 17th to the 19th when they took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. That is unacceptable. Everything about this team has been absolute garbage. I am disgusted. Not for 1 second. I don't care what anybody tells you. After the Mets won on Monday, 11-1, I knew they were losing these next 2 games. That's because how bad this year has gone. You could just smell it. You see it a mile away. In this game today, when the Mets were winning 4-2, do you think for 1 second I thought that I sat back in my seat in the third inning and said, oh boy, this is going to be fun to sit back and watch the Mets win this game today? I knew they were going to lose. Every Met fan in their heart's heart, knew they were going to lose this game today. You could sit there and be hopeful and hope that they're going to win because, hey, every once in a while, they're bound to do that. There's 162 games. But in your heart of hearts, you knew they were not going to win this game today. Especially, like you said, when you're asking to get 6 2/3 innings out of the bullpen because Tyler McGill can't get out of the third inning. This has just been an absolute disgrace. Everything about this team has been disgusting, especially the pitching. The hitting is finally starting to come around a little bit. We're seeing a little bit out of Daniel Vogelback. The kids like Beatty and, obviously, unfortunately for him, Vientos ended up getting sent back down. But that's probably the best thing for him considering Buck wasn't playing them every day anyway. And I'm starting to get real sour on Buck. I like Buck a lot, but hey, Buck, would it kill you to show some emotion? Would it kill you to go out there and maybe get thrown out of a game? I'm pretty sure he actually already got thrown out of a game earlier this year. But let's see it again. This team stinks. I want to see some emotion. I want to see something. And by the way, Steve Cohen too. And I'm sorry that I'm going off right now, but Steve Cohen, he had this interview about a week ago with I forget which publication it was, but telling everybody that he's not gonna panic and that he's got that he doesn't have these reactionary firings and stuff like that. I'm not asking anybody to fire him. Billy Epler is probably the one that is most at risk for his job right now, but I also think you kind of have to give him this deadline, this trade deadline, so there's not really anything that you can do between now and then. You're not going to fire him if you're going to give it to him. So I don't know, Dan. I don't know what to do. I'm fed up. It's June 21st. Today is the first day of summer, and I'm fed up. I'm sick of watching this team. It's driving me nuts. I already want to turn the page to football, and I love the Mets. It's killing me to watch this garbage day in, day out. Now I'll get off my pedestal and take a deep breath and let you respond to that. But I mean, what do you think, Dan? If you're in let's say you're in Steve Cohen's position, are you going to have based off what we've seen, especially over the last month, losing 13 of 17 and everything, just absolute garbage? Would you be firing people, or are you in more agreement with Mr. Cohen that you want to kind of take it a little easy?
For one thing, at the if it's at that point, you kind of have to. I mean, I'd be a bit louder right now. But of course, as you know, I'm not feeling it well, so I can't. I'm trying to hold back how loud I really want to be right now. But it's infuriating now, and they just need to fire. They just need to fire the GM. Also, they should not be afraid. A move needs to be made. They need to be not afraid to make that. Like I've seen a lot of great things. They were not afraid that there is the bullpen. They badly need bullpen at this time, and I just feel like this whole season our bullpen has been weakness.
Yep, I think you really hit the nail on the head. And as a matter of fact, that was one of the things that I was going to point out, because what I don't understand is how you have a $375 million payroll, by far the highest in baseball, by far the highest of all time. And yet, this is the bullpen. These are the names that they continuously run at us and expect us not to see these games get blown. I mean, we've seen Steven Nogasek. We've seen Dominic Leone, John Curtis, Jose Budo, Jimmy Yacobonis, Dennis Santana, Denny Reyes, Zach Muckenheim, or Heim, whatever you say it, Josh Walker, Edwin Uceta, and Grant Hartwig. When you have names like that in your bullpen, how do you expect to compete? You can't run David Robertson, Adam Ottavino, and Jeff Brigham and Brooks Raley out there every single day. You're going to have to get contributions from other people, because obviously with the Edwin Diaz, like we've mentioned, going down, that makes everybody else step up. Well, guess what? The rest of that bullpen has not stepped up. It's been a horror show, and the starting pitching hasn't been much better. Kodai Senga so far, I like Kodai Senga. I think Kodai Senga is going to end up being a very good pitcher, but he's been very, very up and down this year. It feels to me like he's either 7 shutout innings or 5 innings, 4 runs, so he's kind of up and down, and he loses his location every once in a while, starts walking everybody. So Senga is still he's good, but he's a work in progress. Tyler McGill, I don't know, man. He's up and down, and he is just very inconsistent. He does not look like the same Tyler McGill that we saw over the last year and a half or so. David Peterson, he's been banished to the minor leagues and hasn't made an appearance since. He's been okay down there. Peterson, since getting sent down to the minor leagues so far this year. Let's see, where is it? He is in 6 starts, 1-2, with an ERA a shade under 5. So, I don't even know if you want to say it's okay. I thought it was a little bit better than that. And then we have Carlos Carrasco. Carlos Carrasco, who's about to make his 10th start. He's 2-3 with a 6.5 ERA. Now, and I haven't even mentioned Scherzer and Verlander, who, look like they're finally starting to round into form a little bit. Maybe Scherzer a little bit more than Verlander at this point. But I don't know. What do you think the remedy is, Dan? I mean, you mentioned not being afraid to make a move, which I totally agree with. We've mentioned Ohtani in the past. Is there a guy that you think is more perfect for the Mets to solve, a lot of the Mets' problems than a guy like Ohtani? Although, to be honest, as much as I would love to see them trade for him, I don't think the Angels are going to give up on him. I think the Angels are going to kind of hold on to him, to make a run at it and see if they can make the playoffs. What do you think about that, Dan?
Yeah, well, that's kind of what I think with Ohtani. The Angels looks like they're going to try to hold on to Ohtani and try to make a playoff. Probably all signs look like they're just going to let him walk after this stretch run. It looks like they're either going to let him walk or he's going to be highly contested in the free agent market. But luckily, I mean, you got an owner that's going to be willing to go after this fight. But I don't really see many pitchers that's available because a lot of the teams that have these pitchers you think are going to be available, we seem to be also in a thick of that race. So
you're right.
A tough one. I think the big trade they're going to have to make is their bullpen help.
Yeah, I totally agree. The bullpen is because I think eventually the Mets will figure it out with the starters. Whether it means they're going to pick up a guy that maybe not be a top of the line guy, but that can kind of round out the back end of that rotation. I could see that, but yeah, I think you're right that most of the moves the Mets are going to have to make, in addition to picking up a bat too, they're probably going to need a bat. It really reminds me, to be honest, a lot of like what the Atlanta Braves did at the 2021 deadline. They brought in a starter like Jake Odorizzi. They brought in bullpen help like Raciel Iglesias and a couple of these other guys. And then they went out and picked up a couple of bats like Adam Duvall and Eddie Rosario. Honestly, I think the Mets really have to do something very similar to that. They're going to have a deadline where they go out there and add a starting pitcher, probably multiple bullpen guys, maybe a couple of righties, throw a lefty in there, even though they do have Brooks Raleigh, who's been okay. But then they're going to have to also, on top of that, add a bat, because I don't care that Vogelback had a pretty decent last couple of days. I don't trust him. I don't trust him at all, and he kind of proved that to me today, where he had 2 chances late in the game to get a big hit and either tie or put the Mets ahead, and he didn't. He got the hit in the 4th inning, which was good. He hit the home run early in the game. I'm glad to see some signs of life out of him. But if you had to make the decision, Dan, and you were in Billy Epler's shoes, are you going to put your faith in Daniel Vogelback, or would you be trying to go out there and pick up another bat?
I would be trying to go out there and pick up another bat. Sorry, as much as I like Vogelback, as much as I laugh at those little videos on Instagram. I don't know if you've seen those videos on Instagram when the guy's saying, "Oh, look at the cheeseburger at that. He's going in home run the cheese." It's a little bit of water down impression because I can't really speak high enough. But if you see the videos on Instagram, you know what I'm talking about. Have you seen those videos?
Oh yeah, I've seen that.
Yeah, I guess.
Very funny.
I swear, I want to meet the guy who does that commentary, because that guy's, it's a hilarious commentary. It's one of the few things you see reason that's been getting me through this rough season is that guy's commentary of Vogel bats at bat.
Yeah, man. I mean, yeah. So there's there's a lot the Mets really have to sink their teeth into. I am not happy with a lot of the state of the Mets. And to be honest, the thing that really has been angering me is the seem, and they care, but it just seems like I get zero emotion out of these guys at all. They have been terrible for more than a month. Terrible. There's no denying that. I mean, when you look back, we just read off. This team has been so bad. They had 1 6-game winning streak this year, and then other than that, the rest of the season has been garbage. Garbage. I mean, aside from maybe the 7 or 8 games they've played against the Marlins this year, where the Marlins, who by the way are 10 games over 500 now, unlike the Mets, who are 7 or 8 under 500. It's like they've reversed positions. This is a team that won 101 games last year, and they look nothing like that team. It was nice to see Ottavino kind of have a little bit of a bounce back, if you want to call it, although I don't know how much of a bounce back it was, considering he made the bad throw to home plate that cost the Mets a run, which was very annoying. But yeah, man, I mean, when you look at this team right now, it's a very flawed team. It's a team that's playing bad defense. They're not hitting in the clutch. They're definitely not pitching. This has been one of the worst pitching teams I've seen the Mets have in a long time. And yeah, I mean, that's where we stand right now. The Mets are actually at this point, the Mets are closer to last place in the National League than they are to a playoff spot, which means the second wild card. That's how bad things have gotten. This is like 2009, 2017 levels of Mets bad. And, you just really hoped that when the new boss was in town and Cohen took over, that, and we signed all these guys like Verlander and Scherzer, and they won the 101 last year and got the monkey off their back, got back to the playoffs. You just hoped that this was like the beginning of, a new era for the Mets. But boy, this has just turned right back into the same old thing that we've been seeing for every year but 2015 and 2016, I guess, right?
Yeah, the one caveat I guess I could say is good. I feel like our owner Steve Cohen sets us up in good shape. So I feel like we're not gonna be dealing with those issues like the coupons.
Yep.
This guy is actually gonna make the big moves that need to be made. That big move that put us over the hump. That I feel like Red Coupon never made
Yeah.
so many. Yeah, I remember. And then it's Jesus. Yeah, I'm talking about you. The 2000, that all season after 2018. That season that we had an owner like Steve Cohen, a Bryce Harper would have been a Met.
Yeah, it's true, man. It's true. Or maybe even going back all the way back to 2000 when the Mets were trying to woo A-Rod, and that situation didn't work out. He ended up going to Texas, but the Mets had the inside track to get A-Rod there, and between the Wilpons and general manager Steve Phillips, that ended up not materializing. So you got to hope that maybe we get the big fish this offseason in
Yeah,
Ohtani.
yeah, exactly. Of course, we look back at that now. We realize how much of a head case A-Rod was. Did
Yeah,
you even look at the ridiculous demands he made on that contract?
you
That
you
that
are
that
correct, but I'll tell
while
you this much. I'll tell you this much though, Dan, because one of those things was an office. He wanted to have like an office at Shea Stadium or something like that. Now, A-Rod, in the course of that contract, did win a World Series. So, as much as it would have annoyed me giving him that crap, if he came to the Mets and hit like he did for the Yankees in 2009 in the playoffs and got the Mets to the World Series, he could have as many offices in Shea Stadium as he wants.
yeah, I would have took that. Of course. Also, I think 2009. I think that was I think that was after his. I think that was after the original contract.
Well,
If I remember correct.
technically, because he signed that first deal that was 10 years, 250, but then he
Yeah,
opted out. Then he opted out after 2007 and signed the other 10-year 275. So technically, you're right that it was on the second deal. But what I was referring to is that it was in the original 10-year frame that he signed with Texas. So technically, it's in that first 10 years.
yeah, yeah. So technically, McTaylor was, but yeah,
Yeah,
but
but I mean, yeah, but even so,
we're stuck with
yeah,
him
where you
quite
can
a bit. And we've also had a bad history of free agents turning us down and stuff.
yeah.
Remember, well, maybe it worked out well that trade did work out because we noticed that how it turned out with Griffey, all the injuries and stuff. But remember that Ken Griffey Jr. turned down the trade.
Yeah, yeah, that was a big deal. That was supposed to be, I believe it was Armando Benitez and Octavio Dotel going to the I was gonna say Reds, no, not the Reds, the Seattle Mariners for Griffey. But and that's another thing that the Mets botched on that deal because Steve Phillips and the Wilpons apparently only gave Ken Griffey Jr. like a half hour or 20 minutes to make up his mind if he wanted to move from Seattle to New York. And I actually saw an interview with him recently where he said if the Mets had given him more time, a couple of days or a couple of hours even, that he would have accepted that trade to the Mets. But because they put the time limit on it, he said no. So, I mean, but you are right, though. I mean, well, it would have looked pretty good having Ken Griffey Jr. on that 2000 Mets team, and maybe they could have beat the Yankees in that World Series. The length of that contract, Griffey got hurt a lot. You're definitely right about that.
Yeah, he got hurt. Unfortunate that happened. It's such a great player because I think Ken Griffey would have broke Hickey had he not been hurt.
I think you're right about that. I think you're definitely right about that. But yeah, man. I mean, just to wrap up with the Mets here, real quick. I did, as much as I just bashed the Mets, and I as my co-host dipped out there for a sec, he'll be right back. But one thing I did want to give credit to Steve Cohen and the Mets front office for that I wasn't quite sure about, as we are rejoined by Dan here. I was just going to
Yeah,
say, Dan.
yeah. Can you hear me?
Oh, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Yeah,
And
unfortunately, they knocked me out.
that's fine. That happens every once in a while. But you're back in. It's all good to go now. And the one thing I did want to say though, Dan, I was just about to give credit to the Mets front office and Steve Cohen because I was critical last year when the Mets opted not to draft Kumar Rocker in the number 10 spot of the draft last year because they were worried about his arm. And the Mets, and obviously me and you both were upset when the Mets let DeGrom walk last year. So, but I do want to give credit to them because so far the Mets doctors have been right in the fact that obviously Jacob DeGrom broke down and he's already having Tommy John surgery and done for a year. And Kumar Rocker, it was announced recently that he also is having Tommy John surgery. Coincidentally, he's also in the Texas Rangers organization. But yeah, I mean, isn't it interesting the way things work out that the Mets decided to pass on both of those pitchers? The Texas Rangers picked them up, and they both need Tommy John surgery now. So as critical as I can be of the Mets sometimes, you do have to give them credit that their doctors did see, this coming. And, maybe it's just a coincidence too, but as much as we wanted to see Carlos Carrasco signed to the Mets, he's not exactly having a great year.
Actually, you had a Rich Voss moment. You're talking about Carlos Correa.
Oh, Correa, the last one. You're right. You're right.
You had a Rich Voss moment.
Yeah, that's true. I did, but at least I didn't, say John.
But
you know,
But for real, Rich Voss is a great person. We're only joking, Richard.
oh, Rich Voss is the best, man. Such a funny comedian. If you ever have a chance to go see Rich Voss, that guy is like a surgeon on stage because he just knows exactly what to say at the exact right time. He's a professional. The guy knows exactly what he's doing. One of the funniest guys I've ever seen live.
Yeah, and I have to say,
That guy is great with crowd work. Like I've never seen. He could do a whole hour on crowd work, and I would be laughing.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. As Dan drops off again there. But yeah, my two favorite comedians that do that watching them do crowd work are Rich Voss and probably Aaron Berg too. He was hilarious. Yeah, Dan, I was just saying that in addition to Rich Voss, one of the other guys I like to see doing crowd work is Aaron Berg. He's really good at that stuff too.
Yeah. That is. He was. I thought it was weird that he was saying about he was joking about like having me wearing a NASCAR jacket. He was saying all of a sudden you got what do you got sponsors now or something?
Oh my god. Yeah, so very funny stuff and but unfortunately for our Mets it's not exactly a laughing matter as they are doing everything they can to throw this season down the toilet. So let's I don't know. I don't even know what to say at this point now. I don't know what to say. They lost 2 out of 3 to Houston, as so is the 2023 Mets. Now they go to Philadelphia this weekend, who the Phillies had been rolling until they ran to the Braves this week, who had a tough series there. So they got the Phillies this weekend in Philly. The Mets always play Philly well, so maybe it's good timing.
Yep, good timing, good time to make the Phillies our bitch again.
There we go. I like the way you think. So we'll close out on the Mets there. Not happy with the way that things are standing right now with them. Let's just hope that they can get themselves back on the right track. And real quick, as we're going to do a little bit of a shorter show today, but real quick before we move on, just want to give a little love to the Yankees as they went out last night. They beat the Seattle Mariners. They've been having a real tough time with Boston. They lost 5 of 6 games last week to Boston. Now that they're back home and playing Seattle now, so they're trying to get back in the swing of things. Obviously, their ace, Garrett Cole, was on the mound yesterday. He got the win, improved to 8-1. And maybe that 6 games against Boston came at the wrong time without Aaron Judge. But the Yankees are still keeping their heads above water, even without their big slugger back, right?
Yes, I got to give credit to the Yankees. They're just hanging in there by the skin of their teeth, but it's a lot of season left, so you never know.
Yeah, you definitely never know. You're right about that. And the Yankees were able to do what the Mets really weren't able to do is, keep themselves relevant while their big guy is down. Judge had that injured toe, and they're still saying that he's at least a week away, which is, just bad news for the Yankees and bad news for baseball. Because look, I'm not a Yankee fan, but if you're a baseball fan, you gotta love watching Aaron Judge play. Just like I'm a Mets fan, and it hurts that Jacob deGrom left, but nobody wants to see Jacob deGrom get hurt because baseball is better when guys like Jacob deGrom and Aaron Judge are playing, right, Dan?
Yeah, exactly. It's just sad to see that.
Yeah, it's true. And obviously we have this big game or a big series for the Yankees because the Mariners are a pretty decent team. They're facing Luis Castillo on the mound tonight, who a lot of Yankee fans wanted the Yankees to pick up last year. And unfortunately, the Yankees went out and got Montas from Oakland, and he's out for the year. That didn't work out too good. But, yeah, man, I mean, I just want to give the Yankees a tip of the cap because they've been doing a good job. And even though Aaron Boone gets a lot of flack sometimes, right now, if the season ended today, the Yankees are in a playoff position. And unfortunately for our Mets, they're not. So, but the one good thing is that the season doesn't end today. So we still got a lot of time left. We're still not even into July yet. So plenty of time for the Mets to fix things, and plenty of time for the Yankees to go out and address any needs that they have too, because we're still about 6 weeks or so, maybe 5.5 weeks away from the trade deadline. So very, very cool with that kind of stuff. Also, let's move on from the Yankees now, because the Yankees are, they're being the Yankees. They're still in the mix. They're winning their fair share games. So gotta give credit to them where credit's due. But what I did want to move on to was our New York Rangers team. Now, we had some big news break this afternoon with the Hall of Fame that we'll get into in a second. But before we talk about that, because obviously that's going to carry us for a little while, I did want to get your reaction, Dan, to Peter Laviolette being introduced as the Rangers' new head coach yesterday. I watched his introductory press conference, and I was impressed. I was definitely impressed. I've always been a fan of Peter Laviolette as a head coach. I never liked playing against his teams, which is a compliment to him. And I'm pretty enthusiastic with what I saw. What did you think coming out of the press conference yesterday?
I got that same consensus watching that press conference. At the same time, I feel this is a situation where he's in Stanley Cup or bust. He doesn't get the cup during his time, it'll be a bust. Just like we've gone through so many coaches with this team, it's Stanley Cup or bust.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, right now, and I guess it's good to have high standards like that, and just like Rex Ryan alluded to as the Jets head coach years ago. High expectations are good because they push you, and that's something to live up to. High expectations, so you want to have high expectations, but the fact of the matter is the Rangers haven't lived up to it. This most recent year, they should have beaten the Devils, and they had every opportunity in front of them and just didn't. But yeah, so I did like what I saw at Laviolette. I agree with you that he's got to win a cup while he's here. This is a guy that's won a cup in his past. So it's not like you're going out and hiring a guy like John Hines, the former Devils coach, who's a good head coach, but has never even won a playoff round. So I definitely want to give Peter Laviolette his due, man. This is a guy that is such a good head coach. I really, really liked also what he was saying, the way that he, I don't know, the way that he sees the game. He seems like he has like that lunch pail mentality. He's one of those guys that said that from practice to the scrimmages to exhibition games to the early regular season and everything, he wants to have these guys playing a certain way. And, that really resonated with me when I heard him saying that, because it reminded me of the way the Rangers played most of this season and most of last season, where it worked out for that 2021-2022 season. They really didn't play a postseason style of hockey. You know what I mean? Like that gritty in the corners. I think actually that first year when they had a little bit more grittiness to them. It was Goudreau's first season. Then they went out and acquired those guys at the deadline. In addition, you add that to Ryan Reeves, who I think the loss of Ryan Reeves last year had a lot to do with them losing to the Devils. I think a lot of that grittiness came from Reeves in the lower part of that lineup. Unfortunately, he wasn't there. I think the Rangers lost a little bit of that snarl, as they say. I think Peter Laviolette is the perfect guy to bring that back and to help locate players who are, who respond well in that environment. Do you agree with that?
I fully agree with that. I feel like they'll find that right mix. I feel like I don't want to say like high standards, but this is almost giving me Mike Keenan vibes.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, let's hope that it lasts for more than 1 year, like Keenan did when he came here and won the cup and then bolted. But I agree with you, man. This has the feel to it. It's a guy that has a proven track record. And it was pretty cool. I liked the gesture that Chris Drury did yesterday, where if you're not aware, Peter Laviolette actually broke into the NHL in the late '80s as a Ranger. He was the Ranger. He was a Ranger defenseman on their third pair coming up. He only played 12 games at the NHL level, but he actually had a full 12-year minor league hockey career. Some of it with the old Albany Rangers and I'm sorry, not Albany, Binghamton Rangers, and a couple of the other minor league affiliates that the Rangers had at the time. And Peter Laviolette is a hard nosed, good coach, and that's exactly what the Rangers need now. And he's a little bit more hands-on than Gerard Gallant, and it's not a knock to Gerard Gallant because I think Gallant did a lot to take this team to the next level. But it's funny how things work sometimes. I feel like David Quinn did good getting us here. Can you see that? Where is that? David Quinn did good getting us here. I don't know why you can't see that in the camera, but Quinn got us to a certain point. Then Gallant got us to a certain point, and now I hope that Laviolette is that guy to take us to the top, not the next point, to the top of the mountain. And I'm pretty confident that he can. And Peter Laviolette made a great point yesterday, where I believe it was Molly Walker who asked the question from the New York Post, asked the question to him. What's your philosophy on blending these these young guys like Kako and Lafreniere and Keandre Miller and all these young kids the Rangers have, and balancing that out with the veteran guys that they have like Kreider and Panarin and Zibanejad, and the list continues after that. So when I heard his answer, because the question that they asked was, can you win with a team like that? Or do you need a more veteran team? And his answer was brilliant, where he pretty much said, on every team that I've been where we've had success, including his Stanley Cup championship in Carolina, there's always been that mix of youth and veteran experience, So it's and he, I can't name the guys right now that he named. He knows them better than I do. But he went on to go throughout his tenure and his time with the with the Islanders, with the Philadelphia Flyers, with the Carolina Hurricanes, the Nashville Predators, even his most recent stop in Washington. He's talked about how on most teams you have to balance that youth and veteran dynamic, and he seems to be one of those guys that is really well equipped to do that. You know what I mean?
Exactly. I feel like they're in good hands, and I can't wait to see how the season plays out. It's going to be a fun season. Could be another season where I'm bundling up at an outdoor hockey game because later during that season, the outdoor hockey game in February, Rangers Isles, MetLife Stadium. I'm gonna try to get a hold of tickets. Hopefully, we might have to set up Patreon or something. This way, we could both get tickets. I'm sure you'd go if I had 2 tickets.
You're
sure you'd
right,
go,
buddy.
right?
I'll be right there with you.
Yep, exactly. So
Yeah.
we gotta find a way. We gotta find a way to get both halves of this show outdoors there in but bundled up like looking like Kenny from South Park. Because I've attended several of these when the Rangers have done outdoor games. I know exactly. I've had enough experience from them to know what it's gonna take to stay warm that entire game. Another little trick: you go in the corridors of the stadium in between periods. That's another little trick.
That's a good point. Don't keep yourself exposed to the elements. You're right about that.
Yeah, and that is the best time to stand in the corridors of the stadium. Go to the bathroom if you need to. Stand in the corridors where it's a little, wait, where it's probably warmer, and then when it's like maybe like a minute or so you get just enough time to get back to your seat to the start of the period. That's how you do it with those outdoor games.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right. And that's actually the perfect segue, Dan, because while we're on the Rangers topic, and while you bring up the outdoor games, we'll bring up Henrik Lundqvist, who, by the way, was the king of the outdoor game. The guy never lost when he was 4-0 in outdoor games. The only goalie to ever win 4 outdoor games in the NHL. And now he has been elected to the Hall of Fame. Henrik Lundqvist, 459 victories as a New York Ranger, the all-time Rangers winningest goalie, the all-time European winningest goalie. Just one of the all-time greats. So great to see him get elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame. His first chance, the first time that he's eligible, he's going in. His number's already hanging in the garden, so you don't got to worry about that now. But Hank has one more thing checked off his list: Hockey Hall of Famer. Dan, what was your reaction when you saw that he was officially in this afternoon?
My first reaction is maybe I got to see get a passport in case I could pull off a trip to Toronto to see it because I don't have a passport, so I got to. So just in case, it's not a guarantee, but in case I'm able to pull off that trip to Toronto to attend the ceremony, I got to get my passport so I can go up to Canada, go up north. They also another thing I gotta say, I feel old. That makes me feel old. I remember this guy as a rookie.
Yeah, man. I
Look,
mean, the
look,
funny thing is, too, is I remember him getting drafted in 2000. I mean, I didn't think anything of it at the time. He was a 7th-round goalie from Sweden who I'd never heard of. But I remember looking at, because, back then the draft wasn't as interactive and not as easily viewable as it is now. But I remember looking at the prospects the Rangers drafted and seeing Henrik Lundqvist there and not knowing, what a big part of the next 20 years of Rangers hockey that guy was going to be. So you're right. It does make you feel old when you see a guy like this who you watched his entire career unfold in front of you, and now he's going to the Hall of Fame. So it's definitely a crazy feeling.
yeah, yeah, it is. It feels like yesterday. I was at I'm at the Garden and you hear the fan chanting, Henrik, Henrik. You're hearing the fan chant. I can't do the voice imitate that chant what it sounds like because the
Yeah, no, I
feeling
hear
level.
Henrik,
Yeah,
Henrik.
yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I got, it feels like yesterday was at the Garden, and I'm hearing that
Yep,
in the
it's
stands.
true. It's true, man. Henrik Lundqvist was the standard bearer for the Rangers for nearly 2 decades, and he'll be one of my favorite goalies of all time. He'll be, every Rangers fan, one of the favorite Rangers that we've seen over the last quarter century, if not more. At least since that '94 team. So all the love in the world to Henrik Lundqvist. The guy is one of the best, and it's also pretty cool. I was even more happy that he got elected this year because it's really going to be a cool little run for New York here over the next few months until Lundqvist gets elected or inducted. I'm sorry, into the Hall of Fame. Shortly down the road. But even over this summer, it's even going to be a little bit of New York flavor in the NFL Hall of Fame, as the Jets would be inducting, or the NFL will be inducting former Jets Darrell Revis and Joe Klecko. So 3 guys that were pretty prominent in New York sports during their time, all go into the Hall of Fame in the same general area. I guess Lundqvist and Revis really overlapped. Unfortunately, Klecko should have been in years ago, but he played back in the '70s and the '80s. But I mean, you have to admit that it is pretty cool that we got a little New York flavor to these Hall of Fame inductions, right?
Yeah, exactly. Nice little New York flavor to the Hall of Fame induction. It's gonna be plenty of watch for you, and then there's gonna be plenty of Hall of Fame ceremonies you'll be watching on TV. I think I don't currently subscribe to any. I don't really have too much NHL Network because they don't have their broadcasts are not exclusives or anything like that. But I might, even if I don't go to ceremony, I might subscribe to NHL Network just for that moment to watch the ceremony.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. You're right about that, man. Now, before we move on, we're about to wind it down a little bit. I want to ask you, Dan, what, you know, me and you both are diehard Rangers fans. We have seen the best and the worst of this team during our lives. And uh, what do you think, Dan? You saw Lundqvist's entire career. What was your favorite Henrik Lundqvist moment?
Well, one of my favorites was Game 6 Eastern Conference Finals, 2014. Talk about luck ending up
That's
in
ex-
it. Yeah, exactly.
you know,
Talk about luck being present there for it. But the garden
yep.
was rocking, and it's like he just came through, and he just Lundqvist would come through in a clutch in Game 7, and when it was must win, he rose to the occasion. He did everything you could want to do as a goalie, except for, I mean, even though he didn't win the cup, he did just about everything else you would want to do as a goalie.
It's true, man. It's true, and that's yeah, it's funny you say that too. And I guess that's the that really is the answer when you think about it, because that's exactly the first thing that popped in my head too, where you say to yourself, um, thinking back, what is my favorite Lundqvist memory? And yeah, Game 6, Eastern Conference Finals, Madison Square Garden, man. I'll never forget 1-0. When you win a game like that, that means that much, and you win it 1-0, where Montreal played great. You got to hand it to Dustin. What's his name? I believe his name was Dustin Tokarski. I believe was the guy that was filling in for Carey Price after he was injured in that game, and he played very well for the rest of that series. But the Rangers just outwilled them, which was the way the Rangers won games during that Lundqvist era. The old black and blue shirts. So, got to give credit to the Rangers for that, right?
Yeah, exactly. Gotta give credit to that. Lundqvist just he he just he just always had that ability to win a game that was 1-0.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And the other thing that really stood out in my head actually was also the 2-1 victory in Game 7 in the prior round, actually, against the Pittsburgh Penguins. There was a 2-1 game. If you remember, the Rangers were down 3-1 in that series. They came back. That was the Martin St. Louis series where his mother passed away on Mother's Day, I think it was, or they came back and played the game on Mother's Day, and St. Louis scored the goal, and the Rangers would win that game. But yeah, that game will also stick out in my head too as one of Lundqvist's shining moments, because that was the Pittsburgh Penguins in their prime too. You got Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin. That whole situation. Everybody, you know, they had a great team in their prime, and Lundqvist got the job done.
Yeah, just that one. I just had a feeling we got over that hump. We I just felt like we were gonna win it. Unfortunately, we kept losing a bunch of close games in the Cup Finals against the LA Kings. A couple of games I just felt like they were winnable, but didn't play out that well. But that was an incredible run. That whole playoff fight on quick in 2014.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And Henrik Lundqvist, congratulations, Hall of Fame 2023. Well deserved and well earned too. One of the greatest to ever put on the New York Rangers sweater. So, congratulations to Henrik the King, and yeah, from Best Seat in the House podcast. That we send you all our best wishes, and the great Henrik Lundqvist goes in the Hall of Fame there. And I think with that, Dan, I think that's just about going to wrap it up for us today. So before we get out of here, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
Sure. I'd like to plug my Twitter page, Bobo10 3 NYC, and in Instagram Bobo720DK, and also Daniel Curlin on YouTube.
All right, perfect. Yeah, do yourself and Dan a favor. I'll go out there and check all his stuff out. If you want, you could also check us out at bsith_podcast on Twitter. You can check me out at my last name Cramer NY on Twitter, and you can also check us out on Instagram at Best Seat in the House podcast. Also, if you want, please go on YouTube. If that's not where you're watching this, and like and subscribe to our videos. Also, if you have a Rumble account, don't hold off. I know it doesn't seem like too many of our listeners are on Rumble, but if you are on Rumble, please check it out and subscribe to our videos as well. We really appreciate it. So once again, I think that's going to do it for us, Dan. I'm as always, I'm your host Rob Cramer with my co-host Daniel Bobo Curlin, and we'll catch you next week on the Best Seat in the House podcast.